Aboro aboye. Blessings to everybody. Kuojo Ishek Ngota. Hope all is well with you and your loved ones. Want to give us some time to assemble the good people. So we're gonna rock out with my good brother Kunde for a few minutes and give folks some time to join us. All right. I see some folks are filing in. Blessings to you, Aboro Aboye. We got a good word today. Great message. And I hope it's going to be really insightful and instructive, and it's going to have a real powerful impact on your approach, on your practice, and being able to go about the business of spiritual development and spiritual empowerment in a deliberate way, not just leaving things to chance, not freestyling, not slipping into habits of superstition. You know, we got a lot of superstition masquerading as religion, masquerading as tradition, and little by little, you know, the wisdom is coming through. Boro Aboye, blessings to you, Miss Salcedo. Yeah, so we'll just wait another minute. All right, just another minute. So be patient. If you need to get a little glass of water, I estimate that I took notes today, so where I'm saying this might take, this might be just about a 10-minute chat. It might be 15 minutes. I'm not going to get carried away. We've got a class later on today, and so I want to recognize the fact that you have more things to do today than be here in front of your computer or your device. But stay tuned, though. This is going to be an impactful set of lessons for you today and tomorrow. This is something that I know is going to have some long-term impact. Right? You're going to have a lot to think about, and some real important things that you can do, as a matter of fact, to grow and flourish. All right, okay, that's my cue. Blessings to everyone. Aboro Aboye. This is the Orisha Lifestyle Academy in the School of Orisha Studies. I'm your instructor, Obafemi Origunwa. And today what I want to do is I want to share a brief lesson on how to set your intentional growth plan. Okay, how to set your intentional growth plan. And this comes out of in the really biggest picture, biggest, perspective. I've noticed how within Orisha Lifestyle, we're in this prolonged period of unmanaged growth, right? That we're proliferating everywhere. There's people being initiated and people being brought into the tradition, and books are being written, and it's just growing all over the world. And there isn't a real intentionality behind it, right? People are just kind of spawning, right? And just doing whatever they can to create more and to bring in more, consume more. And so it makes for a kind of a chaotic environment, right? So what I'm going to share with you today is going to help you to find your own bearing and your own place in that, and be able to be intentional about your spiritual growth, intentional about your spiritual empowerment. And today, the idea of this lesson came to me sitting here in my son's apartment, and looking at his plants. He got these great panoramic windows overlooking the city. Beautiful place. It's got a lot of light, and in the windowsill, he had this basil, and this basil was over there just struggling for life. You know, it was too much light, too much sun, not enough water, right? So this thing is shriveling up and just hanging on for dear life. And meanwhile, on the mantle, he has, or he had, this orchid, and the orchid was looking a little bit, as they would say in the old days, peaked, right? The leaves are kind of pale and a little bit shriveled, and this, the stem where there used to be a flower is all dried up, and you know, and so right away I switched them, right? And I put the basil over there in the indirect light and put the um, orchid right in the direct light. Put a little water, on it. Orchids only take a little bit of water, and right away I could see the two of them starting to flourish, right? But the reason why that um, came to mind as a grounds for this lesson is because growth is natural, right? Growth is natural. Um, Plants and trees and animals and people, we grow naturally. But in order for us to flourish, in order for us to do our very best, and in order for us to reach, the fullness of our potential, we got to have certain conditions, right? There's certain conditions in a certain setting that is more conducive than others, all right? And so when it comes to your destiny, right? Destiny has built into it this idea of destination. We're largely under the impression that you just go to your destiny, right? You just get on the road and you're going to go to your destiny. But that's not really how it works. You don't just go to your destiny. You grow into your destiny. Okay? You grow into your destiny. You transform from one state of being into another, and that constitutes the realization of your destiny. Now, when you look at Ifa and you look at the verses of Ifa, essay Ifa in particular, the essay Ifa, the verses and the stories, each one of them is a growth plan. Okay? Essay Ifa, the verses of Ifa are growth plans. And there are thousands and thousands of verses of Ifa, right? And there are thousands and thousands of growth plans. Each one of them represents a set of conditions and circumstances that are optimal for growth. Okay? Here's the problem. The problem is the average babalawo, the average priest or priestess, is only giving you the essay Ifa as a sequence of events, like a recipe. And they tell you that this happened first, this happened second, and this happened third. And this person met this situation, they made this sacrifice, and this was the outcome. It's very formulaic, right? And while that much is true, it's a very immature approach. And it promotes the wrong idea. It promotes the idea that you're just going to your destiny. If you do this first, this second, and this third, this is going to be the outcome. But on a deeper level than that, there are the things that happen within your consciousness and in the quality of your existence along the path. As you go through step 1, step 2, and step 3, by the time you get to the outcome, you're a different person, or you're a different version of yourself. And that's the more mature, more insightful, and more wise level of understanding and comprehension that will help you to actually create an intentional growth plan. Okay, key word, intentional. You're doing this on purpose. You're not just doing the steps on purpose, but you're deliberately and conscientiously doing the internal work. You're deliberately seeking to transform yourself in very specific kinds of ways. And that's where the real spiritual unfoldment takes place. That's where the real spiritual discoveries take place. So let me give you an example. Um, Recently, in the School of Orisha Studies, we saw a verse of Ifa that talk about a farmer. Actually, it talk about somebody who was a slave or an indentured servant, more correctly. He's an indentured servant, and in the process of trying to buy back his freedom, he goes to consult Ifa. Ifa gives him a sequence of events. He says, "This is going to be your sacrifice, and this is what you're going to need to do. These are the behaviors you're going to need to carry out." This individual, Telaroko was his name, didn't have all the sacrificial materials. So he sacrificed what he had, and sure enough, he got the first outcome, right? He made this great discovery. He found this big treasure on the king's property, and he was so excited that he started to sing, about his newfound treasure. One of his nosy neighbors heard about it, ran to the king, and the king went and seized everything that was found. He just gave Telaroko a little finder's fee, right? But Telaroko took that finder's fee, and that was enough for him to make the rest of his sacrifice. So he completed the sacrifice with the reward that he got from the king. And again, Ifa advised him there were certain things that he needed to do. Mostly, he needed to be discreet. He needed to not be too quick to, disclose what was going on and what he had. And so Telaroko made the sacrifice. He went back to work, and he's on the farm. A couple of days later, and sure enough, it happened again. He found a treasure, a bigger treasure. This time, he remembered what Ifa said, and he was very deliberate and mindful about not saying anything about what he had found. Instead, he just sang another little song, a coded song about, having discovered some wild orobo, bitter cola nuts, and that allowed him to gradually take the treasure and hide it at his home, bit by bit, little by little, without telling anybody, and then pretend that he was selling the bitter cola in the market in order to enrich himself. And then in a short period of time, he was able to buy his freedom and then live out his life as a very wealthy man. And everyone thought he just did it through being a great cola nut salesman, right? And so now, on a very simple level, you can say, make your sacrifice, don't eat bitter cola, and be discreet about what you do, about your resources and your opportunities. Bang, that's it. Okay. But on a deeper level, what you need to really take into consideration is, how did Telaroko's consciousness change? How was he transformed over this process? What had to happen? Imagine how Telaroko must have felt as an indentured servant, working day in and day out, just making a couple of pennies to be able to pay off his debt, like a sharecropper. Okay, so if you go back and you think about being a sharecropper, and you're selling, harvesting tobacco or cotton or something like that, and all you get is just enough pennies to eke out an existence and make a tiny dent. Maybe you're just paying the interest on your debt, but you really don't believe that you're going to get free. And then you make a prayer, and boom, lo and behold, you get this boom, and this thing allows you to be free. You know that you're going to be able to buy your freedom, but you forgot a key element, and you were indiscreet, and you told the wrong people about it. And just as soon as you got your boon, it was taken away, and you just got a tiny finder's fee. You got enough to buy yourself, you know, a good dinner and a new hat and a new pair of shoes, right? Where you could have been buying yourself a home, right? You got enough to buy a hat and some shoes and a good meal. Imagine how Telaroko must have felt. Imagine how deeply his heart must have sank to have been so close to success, only to drop the ball through his own indiscretion, right? And then imagine what kind of faith and what kind of focus he must have had to be able to then still carry out the remainder of the sacrifice, right? And take the advice again and then go back to work and discover this blessing again, but now be mature enough and sober minded enough to remember what he was supposed to do and act accordingly. And then once he's become blessed again, now he's ready to carry out step by step methodology for gradually setting the stage for his freedom in a way that won't raise suspicion, that won't invite trouble, and will have him a very clear, justifiable explanation for how he went from being an indentured servant to a wealthy businessman. Right? That's a whole different mindset. It's not just doing certain things, but that requires a whole different approach to life. He's got to carry himself in a completely different way, day in and day out. He's dealing with his children. He's dealing with, you know what I mean? If you just think about all the different scenarios that must have come up, he's got the money to be free, but he can't just run into it because he knows that's going to invite trouble for him. All right. So Telaroco's consciousness had to transform. He had to grow and mature in order to be ready to actually behave and live as a free man. And so it's that kind of an insight that Ifa is providing for us in each and every Odu Ifa. Every essay Ifa is providing this opportunity for you to look at it, sure, on a very simple, step-by-step, sequential, transactional way. But that's not where the real transformation is coming from, right? Growing into your destiny requires maturity. It requires an evolution of your approach, of your worldview, and your self-expression. Muhammad Ali says, one of his great quotes is that a man who thinks at 50 the way he thought at 25 has wasted half of his life. Right? You're expected to grow and change and become a higher version of yourself. And that has to be intentional, right? If you don't account for the transformation of your consciousness and you're only thinking about the material aspects of what you're doing, you will have the outer trappings of growth. You have the beads, you have the pots, you have the titles, but you'll have none of the countenance. You'll have none of the disposition. You'll have none of the way of holding yourself and carrying yourself and delivering on your, manifesting your natural gifts and talents. You'll be doing it in just the most simple and transactional sort of a way, right? And so within the School of Orisha Studies, we take the inside out approach, right? When we're looking at all of the steps, we adhere to the methodology and the orthodoxy of the practice, but we do it with the inward vision in mind. All right. And so what I want to share with you today are three elements, what I consider three important elements to creating an intentional growth plan for yourself, and an intentional plan for self-mastery and transformation. The first thing that you need is a visionary goal. You have to know what it is that you want to accomplish. You've got to have something clear in mind. Be specific and be concrete, right? Don't leave it open and conceptually that you just, you know what I mean? You just want to be successful. You got to define your success. When you sit down and you make your prayers and you make your invocations, you got to define what it is exactly you're trying to accomplish. When you are defining your goal, you're defining your desired outcome, it's got to be measurable. It's got to be something that you can count, that you can weigh, that you can you can, at least in your mind's eye, you can turn it around and look at it from multiple sides. It has to be measurable. It has to be related to time. Okay. When you set your visionary goal, you go to Ifa, you go to Orisha, you go to your ancestors, you go to your Ori, you've got to think in terms of time. By this time next year, I will have a I don't know, I will build another level onto my house. By this time next year, I will, build a farm, in the country. By this time next year, I'm going to, have a house by the beach. By this time next year, right? It's got to be measurable and precise in terms of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Another aspect of your measurable goal is that it's got to be something that's somewhat difficult. It's got to be something that's intimidating. It's got to be something that makes your heart skip a beat, gives you butterflies. You have to be a little bit afraid of what you're trying to accomplish, right? Even if it's just at the level of you've you've got a good goal, when you can say to yourself, where I am today, this aspect of where I am today cannot continue any longer. It cannot continue any longer. This must change. It's not nice to have. It's not, it would be really cool. That would be cute. This is icing on the cake. No, you got to really get down to the root of your discomfort and say, this cannot continue. I cannot do without this. If it's a relationship, you know what? I cannot be um, dissatisfied in this relationship any longer. It is intolerable. I cannot be single, right? Any longer. It has reached a point where I am not willing to be single any longer. Whatever the case may be, this job, I'm not willing to stay in this position any longer. You've got to get to that point. There has to be a little surge of desperation, of discomfort, right? That it just cannot continue any longer. It's not tolerable. All of these things are tied into you defining in very concrete terms your goal. Okay? This is essential to you creating your intentional growth plan. And key word again is intentional. Most people are just leaving it up to chance. Most people are just saying, I'll just kind of play along. I'll go along to get along for as long as it takes, and then whatever happens next is what I'll do. That's not going to allow you to do your best within the realm of Ifa. It's not going to allow you to do your best. You need to be clear and explicit, and you need to have a very high level of conviction that you are not playing. You are not just coming to Orisha to spin your wheels and bounce ideas off Orisha. No, this is urgent. This is serious. I've got to get this done. I've got to get out of this situation. I've got to move this thing. That's number one. All that goes into the creation of your goal, defining your problem. What problem are you solving? When are you going to solve the problem? What is the solution? What does the solution of the problem actually look like? All that is first. And that's the most important part. Okay? That's the most important part. Once you got that part, these next two phases are going to be a lot easier to carry out. The second phase of your intentional growth plan is assessing the cost, so to speak. You've got to assess how much is it going to cost you in money. How much is it going to cost you? Tools, equipment, travel, advice, information, training, education. How much is it going to cost? You need to assess that. Your growth is not going to come for free. Very significant mental block that a lot of people come into when I get to them. I meet a lot of people who stumble right there. Somewhere in your mind, you were given the idea that your spiritual growth, your personal growth should be free, and nothing is free. There's nothing is free. You're going to have to spend money. You have to invest in your growth. You have to invest in your growth. Just like if we go back to the analogy of the plant, you got to invest in cultivating your plants. You got to grow pots. You got to get pots. You got to get soil. You got to get fertilizer. It's not going to happen just because it's natural, right? Just because it's natural. It costs money. You got a dog. It's natural for a dog to grow, but you've got to pay and invest in that dog's growth. Okay. And so it is with your spiritual development. Stop the idea that you're not going to have to pay for equipment, tools, advice, information, training, and education. Assess it, calculate it, and put it on a wall. This my growth is going to cost me this much money. And even if it's really expensive, even if when you can juxtapose that cost against the desired outcome, if you take the time to really do the definition of your problem, like I said in that first phase, and you weigh them out and you balance those two, what you really have, what you really have to accomplish, and how much money it's going to cost, the money is going to be small. The money is going to be minuscule. The money won't even matter when you really are clear about what you must accomplish. All right. That's number two. And number three, this is the part that, is the driving force. This is what will make the difference between, you taking a real childish, immature approach to Orisha lifestyle and your spiritual growth, and a more mature, wise approach. And that is accounting for your transformation. Account for your transformation. How will your perspective be different? Sometimes the celebrities, right? Comedians. I've heard a couple of different comedians say, you're on the way up. You're climbing the ladder of success. Are you going to change? Once you get to $1 million, are you going to change? Once you hit 5 million, are you going to change? Once you hit 20 million, are you going to change? And they say, yeah, absolutely. Damn right, I'm going to change. Right? They know how they're going to change. They know how their food is going to change. They know how their clothes are going to change, how their living conditions are going to change, how their travel accommodations are going to change. Likewise, how is your mentality going to change? How is your emotional disposition going to change? How is your perspective and your worldview going to change? Maybe you're going to be less friendly. Maybe you'll be more friendly. Maybe you'll be more patient. Maybe you'll be less tolerant of nonsense and people's inconsistencies, right? You need to anticipate that. You have to anticipate that. And that can be the most difficult part to actually predict and appreciate and accept. And this is where things like biographies, quite honestly, become really important. This is where I would encourage you to go and start looking at biographies, read biographies, and look at the lives of great men and great women in history, and get a real good sense of what they were like as children, what they were like as adults, what they were like at the beginning of their career, what they were like at the end of their career. And that will help you to get a better understanding of what is inevitable as it pertains to your growth and your transformation. Because again, like the Muhammad Ali quote, a man who thinks like he did, at 50, a man at 50 who thinks like he did when he was 25 has wasted half of his life. You're not supposed to stay the same. You're supposed to evolve. You're supposed to transform. Okay. And so start to integrate and incorporate the inevitability of your personal transformation in your goal setting and the creation of your intentional growth plan. Okay, so all of these things together, your goal, the cost, and the anticipated change in your maturation, all of those are essential to your ability to be able to purposefully and deliberately set the stage for growth and total transformation. Now, as I said in the Orisha Lifestyle Academy, I'm looking for leaders. Okay, this is the leadership track. This is the track for people who want to transform the world through positive change. That's who I'm talking to. Some people don't want to do this. Some people just want to stay on the very simple, mundane plateau of spiritual materialism. All I want to do is, assess my situation, make my offerings, and then wait for my outcome. That's all I want to do. That's fine. Okay. But that's not who this message is for. This message is for the people who want to transform the world and not be transformed by it. These are the people who want to lead the collective into a better place, into a higher place. If that's you, if this message speaks to your condition, if you know that you are one of those people, I invite you to look at how the Orisha Lifestyle Academy, the School of Orisha Studies, can help take your life and your practice to the next level. Blessings to you and yours. I pray that all will be well with you, that the ancestors will continue to walk with you, to guide you, to keep you, and elevate your life and reveal to you your purpose, your mission, and give you the courage, the will, and the resources necessary to carry it out and accomplish what you were born to do, no matter what, by all means necessary. Abora boye, aboshishe.